I'm going to teach you now is this concept of presence and this ability to basically hold space for your clients. It's a very powerful idea, and it's probably one of the hardest things that I think coaches struggle with because, well, candidly, you're probably thinking to yourself like, "Oh my God, they paid me so much money. I have to deliver. I have to give them all this stuff. I have to get them their make sure that they get their money's worth, et cetera, et cetera." And what I can tell you, having done this for many years, is that the ability to be reflective in and slow is probably one of the most underrated traits of any coach. And the more that you can slow down and be quiet, the easier it is for you to be able to actually tailor to the client whatever they need. So that's huge, because a lot of times when we start working with clients, we think I got to jump in, I got to fix it, I got to give them the step by step, I got to tell them what to do, and that's that. I'll even add on now. Again, what happens when you're in that mode is either A, you'll talk the whole session, and if you'll talk the whole session or even most of the session, your clients aren't going to get what they need because it's not about you, right? And so you might think you did a great job, but your clients will probably think you sucked. So that's the first thing, right? They're not necessarily always coming for advice. And you might think, well, what do they pay me for? Well, they're paying for you for what I'm going to teach you how to do right now. And the other cool thing is, if you follow what I'm saying here, very likely when you do give advice, it will be much more on point. It will be incredibly on point. Usually they will listen to it a lot better, and you will have confidence that what you say actually is going to work. Why? Because I operate off of this premise that everybody actually knows what they need to do. And if you can break steps down small enough and break thinking down small enough, you can create clarity pretty easily. But if you're focused on you doing the talking and you doing the solving and you looking like a genius, surprise, surprise, you're not going to look like a genius and you're probably going to screw up, right? So what does that look like to create a space? And again, this comes back from like a spiritual concept that I've really identified with, is that like there's a whole idea that like God had to constrict himself to create the world, right? And so in this area where we're helping people grow, we want to actually emulate God, right? And just to actually create space and not to fill all the space, because all the creative energy that our clients are going to have is coming because we've created that space for them. I'll share one story. I was working with a company that does a bunch of very complex real estate stuff, and I don't know 90% of what they were talking about. That's fine, because what I was waiting to do in the conversation was to actually figure out what their problem was. Had I asked them at any point to go into more details, I totally could have. But what I was waiting to do was to, again, because usually most people don't have time to talk. Usually they're just operating, they're thinking a million things at once. And when these people started to talk, they use a bunch of, again, and had I felt like they needed help, and again, like they were still talking, well, I got to figure out how to monetize this, that, the other thing, we have these 5 deals going and this and that, all these, like, and I'm like, like honestly, I'm on ChatGPT just trying to follow what they're saying. And then at a certain point, what became evident was, all the stuff they're talking about, there's an issue with the partnership. And until that gets resolved, all of these things are pretty hypothetical, because how they relate to the partner is going to change all this stuff. So I said, well, slow down a second. So we have you spent, probably in some cases 30 minutes describing all these complex problems. But there's this one thing that if that doesn't get resolved is going to change, that's going to affect everything over here. And the guy's like, yeah. I was like, cool. So before we go to how you're going to do this part, what about this other thing that's going to affect that? He's like, yeah, that's a big thing. I didn't even think about that. I'm like, okay, so what's the problem with the partnership thing? And then he spent another 15 minutes, 20 minutes talking through things. And at the end, basically, I came down to say, so what I'm hearing you say is that based on these things, you would need to have this type of a conversation with this partner before anything actually goes. Is that accurate? And he's like, I feel like such an idiot because after me rambling for 50 minutes, you figured out the one thing that I actually have to do. And I said, yeah, great. Now, again, I'm not a genius. Had my ego been on the line, I would have stopped him the first thing he said, tried to figure out this whole thing, probably look like an idiot because I didn't know what he was talking about, right? Oh, but when you try to, let's try to raise the prices on such, like, what? Get out of here with that, right? But it was only by me allowing him to go through his process, to ask the questions, to think about the things, that I was able to say, like, hey, well, what about this thing working? How does that actually sound? And he was like, yeah, That's actually exactly what we need. So the point is, when you get onto conversations, what your objective is really is to slow down, to create space. Effective listening is mostly being quiet, what we would call like active listening, which is interesting. Thank you for telling me. What's that like? How does that show up for you? Tell me more about that. What else, right? Tell me more, right? I'm also usually, when I'm coaching someone, writing down the words that they actually use. I'm trying to pay attention to how they use language. I'm trying to hear how they define things. It's so hard to get this done. This is a huge challenge for me. So I'm writing a huge challenge. That's the language they're going to use. It sounds to me like it's a huge challenge. Now, if I would say it's a significant problem, they might be like, yeah, again, because the more that you're able to mirror language, the more people know that you're listening to them, because you're literally able to know what they said to you, right? So I'm looking for, what are they saying? I'm looking for what's their real problem. I'm also simplifying everything they say. If you've ever watched me coach, you'll know, until I'm really clear on what the problem is, I don't keep going, right? Someone will talk for 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, cool. So what's the biggest problem with that? I don't know, 5 more minutes. Interesting. And if you had to put that into one sentence, what would that be? I don't know. Then eventually you get one sentence. I'm like, that's the biggest thing to work on. And then they'll be like, no, I don't really care about that. It's this other thing. You're like, cool. So what's that problem? So a lot of times I'm not looking to solve. I'm looking to clarify. And the only way I can clarify, if I can step back and create enough space for you to walk in and to have your process. And the cool thing about that is, and a lot of times coaches are like, well, how do I feel confident I can help people? It's like, if you feel confident that you can be quiet and hold space, which you can do right now, just by watching this video, learning how to do it, right? When people talk to you in your daily life, not right away jumping. Again, if you think about it, like, if you ever heard someone converse, a lot of times it's like, I'm waiting for you to shut up so I can talk. That's not a conversation. A real conversation, an intimate conversation, a deep conversation is one person giving the other person space to speak. That person actually validating what they're saying, in some cases asking questions or repeating back what they're saying, and then going further slowly in order to help them figure out what they actually need. And again, you have to be willing to put your ego aside, like this and like everything, because ultimately, if you are not able to really deeply listen, you're going to have a really hard time actually knowing what the problem is. As I mentioned with those first examples, and I showed someone who does a lot of executive coaching afterwards, and she's like, whoa, I would have totally just like jumped into a whole strategy with spreadsheets on that first issue. I'm like, yeah, well, good news is I don't know how to do that. And other news is that if you'd done that, he would have not seen the main thing and you would have built a whole strategy. Actually, the same thing happened with another client now that I'm thinking about it. Again, and thank God, like the people I work with, brilliant, incredibly smart, made more money than me, older than me, smarter than me, all the things. A client of mine mentioned, I'm thinking about doing this project. I want to start involving AI. I want to do this and that and this and that. And it's going to help the client, this, whatever. And this, and again, I'm going to bring this person. I'm going to hire these people. Huge process. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, what's the problem that's actually going to solve? He's like, well, it's going to help this, that, the other thing, make it more seamless with our clients. And I'm like, awesome. And is that the biggest problem that your clients have? Is that you're in the process of, like helping clients like that? And, he said, no, the biggest problem we're having is actually getting more clients. I'm like, great. But most of the clients you get, like, they're pretty happy with the service. He's like, yeah. So I said, you're spending all this time, effort, money, focus on doing a better job with the clients you already have, when the real problem that already having is that you don't have enough clients. He's like, oh my God. Yes. Thank you. So again, because I asked the question, because I had the space, I was able to know exactly what they needed. So again, practically speaking, learn how to constrict yourself so your clients can come in more powerfully. Your presence matters much more than your answers. Reflect back what your clients are saying. Ask them, does that make sense? Is that what you're saying? What else? You can challenge them. Is that really the biggest thing? Is that the hardest thing? I'm not hearing that you're totally committed to that, right? You can encourage them, but don't rescue. Don't try to step in with all of your answers, because 9 times out of 10, that's not what they need. And 9 times out of 10, that's not what they're going to be able to implement. And whenever someone tells me something, I'm always the first to ask, hey, is this actually what you need? Are you able to commit to this? How would you say it yourself? If I can get the client to tell me what they need, they'll for sure understand it's true. If I tell them what they need, there's always going to be some level of question, or it's not going to totally resonate. That is everything in coaching, and the secret to having any success possible, which is that if you work with great people, or you work with people, they already know what they need. You just have to give them the space to figure it out.